Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Rainbow Vision Network for Wednesday, April 25th, 2012. I'm Betsey Lewis. We have an exciting guest today. I can't wait to talk to her, Dr. Lynne Kitei. She is an internationally acclaimed physician and health educator who is a key witness to perhaps one of the strangest events ever witnessed by thousands of people, an unexplained mass UFO sighting that took place throughout Arizona on March 13th, 1997, known as the Phoenix Lights. Dr. Lynne put aside her medical career to pursue the Phoenix Lights through her book, The Phoenix Lights, and an internationally award-winning documentary project. She has been featured many times on Coast to Coast AM and as recently as March 13th, which was the 15th anniversary of this incredible sighting. She has been a keynote speaker at many UFO conferences and featured guest on television and radio. Be sure to visit Dr. Kitei's website where you can order her book and documentary and find out about her schedule and read her articles. That's thephoenixlights.net. Welcome to the show, Dr. Lynne. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, Betsy. Thank you so much for having me and letting me hear about the Phoenix Lights.
Yes. Well, thank you for being here and taking time out of your busy schedule. Are you still a practicing doctor?
Actually, that's a very good question. In some sense, I feel that I am helping people heal, so I am still using my physician attributes because it's very important that people share their stories. Even though most things can be explained, when someone has an anomalous experience, it's real to them. And like myself, who also is an experiencer, had a close sighting of orbs, the Phoenix Lights, 2 years before the mass sighting, which we can get into. But once you have an experience like that, and there is no explanation, no earthly explanation that you can seek out, which I certainly went to great lengths to find a logical source and meaning for what I witnessed and photographed, and I know a lot of other people do the same. It sticks with you, and especially when you have them at a young age. If you don't share and you don't get it out in the open, it festers, and that's not healthy. And one of the reasons that I came forward after 7 years of anonymity was actually to let people know that they're not alone. Again, even though most things can be explained, there's a small percentage that cannot. And just because we don't have the technology yet to definitively define what these anomalies are, it doesn't mean they're not real. We may just be looking on the AM dial for an FM frequency. And, I always tell the story, it took 17 centuries before humankind realized with the advent of the microscope that there are trillions and trillions of tiny living organisms all around us, even in our body, that we can't see. But they're there. Sure. And some are pathogens, some are beneficial. We've learned to live with them. And just as we can't see these tiny living organisms or radio waves or gamma rays, whatever, it doesn't mean they're not real. So, my whole thing with coming forward after really studying this extensively, after thousands of people had seen what I saw, was really to say, hey, you know what, there is such compelling data out there, if you seek it and you actually read it, that alerts you to the fact that there is something advanced technologically far advanced, more advanced than anything we can even imagine, gracing our skies, and actually even more than that. So we can get into that a little bit too. But what do you do with that? I mean, once you realize there is so much more of a reality out there than we're being told.
Absolutely. I loved your book. It was great. It had so much information in it. But what I really got from it, and what I felt you were saying, that mass consciousness is changing now. Our old world is dying and a new one is being reborn, and we're all waking up now. I think we're all getting that message from these beings, and I call them DBs, dimensional beings. I don't see them as ETs, but I kind of wanted to talk to you about that too. But why don't you take us back to that time, 1997, or even before that, when you start seeing these lights? Because I don't think it's any coincidence you did see them.
Well, I don't believe in coincidence anymore, I have to tell you. In fact, I'll be giving a presentation just coming up on May the 19th at the first Women's UFO Symposium in Glen Rose, Texas.
Wow.
That's what I'm going to be talking about, coincidence or connection. And actually, sometimes I call it coincidence or communication because it's so bizarrely serendipitous. But anyway, and I'd love to get into the other stuff that you mentioned as well, so let's not forget that. But what's really profound is that I had no interest or knowledge in this topic at all. In fact, I stayed away from it, and that's one of the things we mention in the documentary is we're so inundated with threat, and harm, and media and movies, Hollywood, and so forth, that our mindset is so set in fear that I didn't even want to deal with any of that. So, I mean, I was too busy actually producing video and workbook curriculums on the reality of vital health issues for 30 years, like AIDS and teen pregnancy and substance abuse for the classroom, discovery education, distributing them as we speak, that when this fell in my lap and I knew nothing about this, not only did I have to educate myself first, certainly after thousands of people saw what I saw 2 years later, but in good conscience, how could I stick what I had in the drawer? Because 2 years before the mass sighting, my husband is also a physician and a skeptic, and I call us healthy skeptics because when you're a physician, you must be open to whoever is going to work for. But still with a skeptical eye, I mean, we both witnessed the same thing. We saw 3 amber orbs in a pyramid formation, one on top and 2 closely aligned underneath, literally 100 yards from our home. I mean, we live mountainside in Paradise Valley, which there are mountains surrounding the Valley of the Sun, they call it. And we are in a location where we have a view of the whole Phoenix Valley, and then beyond that we see mountain ranges. And actually, there's 2 mountain ranges, and this is another serendipitous occurrence. Is that if you get onto the website, thephoenixlights.net, and thank you for mentioning that, because if anybody's near a computer and they can get to the photo page, it's really quite poignant when you look at the data. It speaks for itself. The
Dr.
first picture I have there is... Can
I interrupt you for just a minute? Is that on your book cover? Because I do have it on the montage that, scrolls.
There are several pictures, yes.
On my page.
Actually, the picture that's on the book cover I captured 1 month after 9/11. There's a story to that, if we can get to that. But,
okay.
the first picture that I have posted on the photo page on the phoenixlights.net website, Phoenix Lights Network, is a topography, the view from our balcony. And you can see that there are 2 mountain ranges in the distance. One is South Mountain to the left, and the other, a bit further, a few miles, is called the Estrada Mountain Range. Now, interestingly, I was invited to present my substance abuse prevention education program to the Gila Bend Indian Reservation School, which is one school on the reservation, very sacred ground, in the basin in between. That's where it's located, in between where South Mountain and the Estradas intersect. And you can see in the picture where they intersect. Well, we got friendly. They don't really talk to outsiders, but I helped them out. And This was 6 months before the mass sighting. After the mass sighting, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I wanted to just interject this because it's really a cool. I started noticing that my pictures, and in science we look for repeatability, every time these phenomena would pop up, it would be right where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. So I thought, geez, maybe they saw something on March 13th, so I called them up. And I asked them, and they started to giggle. And I said, is that funny? And they said, are you kidding? Not only were they above our heads on March 13th, but we've been looking up at them for centuries. They call them sky people, light beings. I had no idea. I knew nothing about this topic. And that really blew me away, because not only did I learn that these phenomena are part of their culture, but they welcome them. Some of the Native Americans here right in the state, Hopi, have protocols to invite these intelligences in, and some of them believe that these orbs, and I want to get back to my close sighting of orbs, but the orbs are actually spirit worlds. They're ancestors coming to give them comfort and inspiration and motivation and messages. And this really blew me away. And when I started looking into that aspect of the whole thing, I found out this is worldwide. For many centuries, Native peoples have believed that there's other intelligences. They're very open to them. They don't fear them at all. And actually, the Estrellas was named by the Spaniards because of the stories that they were hearing. Estrella Mountains, which means star in Spanish, and they actually believe in the area that there is a portal. It's a gateway to the stars, a portal or a gateway in that area.
I believe it.
I'm just mentioning that because it's an interesting aside, and and really gets back to the spirituality, which as you mentioned a little earlier, these phenomena are waking people up, not only to their presence, but in a very gentle, non-threatening way, which I'll describe in a sec, but also to who we are as human beings, as spiritual beings, the positive potential we have as human beings over and over and over again. Not only an unexplained aerial phenomena, but I also hear that with near-death experience, and I found a connection, which we'll talk about as well. But anyway, getting back to 1995, here we're looking at 3 amber orbs, and I call them orbs because the light did not extend outside the edge. And this is like a little below us. We're pretty high on the mountain. And this is behind a gated residence, very treacherous land. Nobody was back there. It was behind their house. And, I'm thinking to myself, if I don't get a picture of this, well, first of all, I tried to take everything in, I have to tell you. I tried to take a mental picture. If you've ever done that, it's a really, really neat thing to do when you're in a moment, to really take everything in. You should do it all the time, but I know we're all so busy. But I really tried to take everything in, the color, the shape, the size. They were about 3 to 6 feet each, depending on how close they were. They were actually oval shaped, like an egg on its side, and the color in each orb was a uniform amber color throughout. It didn't glare at all. Every other light out there glared, street lights and car lights and whatever. These did not glare, and I thought to myself, geez, this is different than anything I ever imagined being on Earth. Nobody's going to believe this unless I take a picture of it, so I start running to the closet to grab my 35 millimeter, which I keep handy because I collect sunsets, beautiful sunsets here in Arizona. And my husband calls me back and says, get over here quick. And one wall of our bedroom is a window. And I should mention that because whatever pops up out there, whether it's a dust storm or a fire, or we watch planes coming in all the time, and occasionally we see flares too, and planes, we're very familiar with what's out there. But if something unusual pops up, we see it, and to get back here quick, one of them is disappearing. And you mentioned interdimensional before. Yeah. And I have to tell you, I always go back to the 95 sighting, because as we watched, the top orb, without budging, started to, it's so difficult to explain and have a word for it, because you can say it was dimming. When you ever see those lights that dim, but they're like imploding from the outside inwards. This is mechanical. This is mechanical. Wow. There was some kind of intelligence behind it as it was getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until it was a dot, and then it was out. But it felt like it was still there, I have to say. And, where did it go? I mean, and by the way, after all three disappeared, it felt like they were still there for about 3 weeks. But at any rate, I stepped out on the balcony. I quickly shot a picture of the two lower orbs, which is posted on the website, the second picture there, and immediately noticed an eerie silence, as if time had stopped. It was just bizarre.
Wow.
It's indescribable. I mean, as intently as I was watching the two lower orbs, it felt like something was watching me. I have to admit that, which I did not admit to anyone until after the mass sighting 2 years later. But going through my mind at that exact moment, I was thinking, who are you? What are you? Do you know that I'm here? I'd love to meet you. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I was thinking. The next thing I remember, the left orb started to dissipate, just like, imploding, just like the top one did. And I quickly shot a picture of that. Now, what's amazing is that I happened to capture it as it was happening. The third picture in the row on the photo page shows one half disappeared and one's still there. Now, what's interesting, and if we have time, we can go back to this, or I can share it now. Those pictures have become extremely important because they were actually analyzed by Navy optical physicist, respected UFO researcher Dr. Bruce Maccabee, way back in 1998. And the first and the last picture, and he says to me, how long was that sighting? And I told him a couple minutes, 3-4 minutes tops. He said, are you sure? And that's what I remember. He said, ask your husband. Now, my husband was inside and I was outside when all this was happening. And he would never talk about it. Now, I don't know if anything happened or whatever, but it's amazing how different people react to these experiences.
I know. I've had that.
Yeah, everybody comes from a different background, different upbringing, different belief system, and some people can't deal with these. Mm-hmm. Some people don't want to deal with it, and that's okay. Everyone in their own time. If someone has to feed into a logical explanation like flares or blimps or whatever, that's okay. Everyone in their own time. But anyway, he would never talk about it, and Dr. Maccabee said, you've got to sit him down and corroborate the time. So I finally did, and this was 3 years later. And I finally did, and he said, 3-4 minutes. And I went back to Dr. Maccabee. He said, that's impossible. I said, what do you mean? He said, look at the pictures. And anybody that's on their website and can get to the photo page, it really is a visual because, first of all, in the background is the same exact formation of lights in a row, disappearing. We didn't even notice because we were so focused on the close one. In the same exact location that I would also capture 2 months before the mass sighting, head-on, turning into a V, and during the mass sighting, the only video that has been substantiated so far as an unknown, okay? Now, that's number one, okay? So the same phenomena was there in the background when we were looking at the close orbs. And by the way, as another little aside, during the mass sighting, some people did see these orbs detach from the main object, go out into the environment, and then redock back with it. Is that what happened in 95? I don't know. I leave that up to the listener to decide. But anyway, he said, besides that, he said, look at the skyline. I said, okay. And I would have never in a zillion years noticed this. He said, there are many more groups of lights on in the first picture that are off in the last picture. He said, that doesn't happen in a couple minutes. He said, I'd like you to do an experiment. I'd like you to go out on the balcony and stand approximately the same spot you were standing in 95 and take the skyline pictures one night every hour, one night every half hour. I did it another night every 15 minutes to be precise.
Wow.
And we'll see when these lights start going out. Well, I usually take a bath between 7 and 8 in the evening. And when we're home, and my husband called me out of the bath to see it in the first place. So let's be conservative and say 8 o'clock is the starting point. Well, the first groups of lights started going out at 9. The last picture is indicative of 10:30, 11 o'clock. Now, I couldn't even wrap my head around what he was saying, and he asked me if he can present the case at the upcoming 1999 MUFON Mutual UFO Network symposium in Washington, D.C., International Symposium in Washington, D.C., that was coming up. I said, you know what, Dr. Maccabee, you discovered this. I would have never, ever in a zillion years noticed what you noticed. He was very meticulous in each group. There were about 5 or 6 or more groups. This is your baby, but you know what? Keep my name out of it, please, which he was kind enough to do. And he presented the case in 1999 as the first authenticated photographic evidence ever of missing time. Now, it is what it is. I never told a soul. It's so bizarre, and he has his 21-page report on our website. If anybody cares to read it, it's very detailed, and there's a lot more to the story. But I couldn't even go there.
You were missing time, though.
Well, I don't know. I guess we were. I mean, I have to tell you, after I took that second picture, I don't really remember anything more. I don't remember, I vaguely remember the last one going out, but not really, and I don't remember even going in or going to bed. I never looked at a clock. I just don't remember. But it doesn't matter. And what Dr. Maccabee even said after, we had years of conferring on all this is that if the Phoenix Lights hadn't happened and I hadn't had that experience, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So it obviously impacted me in a very, very powerful way. But be that as it may, I saw these things up close and personal. Now, 2 years passed. I never saw anything even remotely similar until 2 months before the mass sighting. I see these orbs at a distance in formation. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, they're amber, they're in a formation, they were in a line formation the first night, 3 of them, and totally equidistant from each other, and they were hovering for a while. And I thought, wow, strangely similar to 95, and they disappeared, each one. You could see they were imploding from the outside inwards, just like they had in 95 from right to left, and they were gone. The next night I see the same 3 lights, but now they're in front of South Mountain. The night before they were in the northwest sky. And I knew they were in front of South Mountain because there's red blinking lights alerting airplanes coming into Sky Harbor International Airport, and that was higher than these were. And I thought, geez, I've got to get a video of these. So I ran downstairs, grabbed my camera, got outside, got about 18 seconds worth, and the battery went dead. Now, the battery was charged, so that's something else you hear, the electronics, even with pilots and planes, goes haywire when they're near anomalous objects. But anyway, I was disappointed, and I went back and I hooked it up. About a half hour later, 8:30, my husband comes up the drive, and I go outside and I said, remember I told you about the 3 lights far north last night? Well, about a half an hour ago, they were right in front of South Mountain, and as I'm pointing in that direction, they appeared in the same spot. It was amazing, and I thought, oh my goodness, I've got to get a picture of this. And I ran upstairs, and again, this is where coincidence comes in, because video is not really easily analyzed. I mean, the lights are much smaller, they flicker, they're white in video. That's why so many people are fooled by the military's explanation of flares, even though the formations are very compelling. And if you really look at the data, it speaks for itself. I mean, the flares cannot hold a formation. But be that as it may, 35 millimeter happens to be the best way, other than infrared, to analyze these anomalies. And I grab my 35 millimeter, get out on the balcony. Just as I'm ready to shoot the 3, 6 pop up, massive span over a mile wide, over the 3. It was really unnerving. In fact, you can see in the first picture of that series on the photo page on the phoenixlights.net that I'm shaking. That's why it's wavy. And it was real. I mean, not having an explanation for 95, it was like, oh my God, what is this? A mothership or a fleet? I mean, it really was unnerving. Okay,
oh, I bet.
Because it was so unusual. But I kept, clicking away and actually caught this thing head on, turning into a V shape. But it was so bothersome that by the morning, I figured, somebody else has got to have seen this, and I had called the newspaper. They said nobody called in. Well, I did the night before, so that was interesting in itself. But I called around, and they said sometimes Luke Air Force Base does experimental maneuvers, so I called them up, and I try to be very professional. My husband and I are physicians, and we saw some strange lights in front of South Mountain. Do you know what they might have been? And from the get-go, the operator had an attitude. And she said, well, they didn't come into Luke Air Force Base, and they didn't come out from here, so we had nothing to do with it. And I said, well, be that as it may, we did see something. I got it on film. Can you help me here? I want to sleep tonight. So she said, well, you said it was near the airport, so maybe somebody saw something there. Well, now it was a mission. So I call the airport. I finally get the FAA on the phone, tell them the same thing, and she says, well, maybe one of the air traffic controllers saw something last night, and keeps me hanging for about 5 minutes, which seemed like an eternity. Finally, she came on, and she said, you know what, there was a group of air traffic controllers last night that saw some strange lights, and some of them are here this morning. I said, oh, please, can I speak with one of them just to confirm that we saw the same thing, right? Well, finally, he gets on, and I have to tell you, he's a really mellow guy. He was more excited than I was. He said, did you see the six lights that were hovering, equidistant from each other, in a formation last night? I said, at 8:30? I said, yes. He said, well, there were 3 at 8 o'clock. I said, I saw them too. I got some on video. He said, when they popped up at 8 o'clock, they looked on radar, didn't show up on radar. At 8:30, when they popped up again, they were really concerned because it was in Class B restricted airspace. This is really important data, and unless you read my book, you don't know this, because there's a 30-mile radius around the center of the airport that anybody that goes into that airspace, particularly 1,000 feet altitude as these were, has to call into the tower, and no one did. So they looked on radar again, didn't show up on radar. They took their binoculars, high-powered binoculars, to look, and in their own words, they described 6 points of light totally equidistant from each other, massive span that seemed to be attached to something, but they couldn't quite see what it was attached to. And you would hear this again, even though some people did see craft, and we'll get to that. But many people just saw lights, but there was something in between, either a force field or something, holding them rock solid. And one of them was a meteorologist as well, and said that the whole thing turned as a unit against the wind, and then moved in synchrony behind South Mountain. So I said, so what was it? And there was silence. And then one of them said, beats me. I said, you're air traffic controller. You're supposed to know it's in our airspace, and you don't know what these were. They had no clue. They said they definitely weren't flares. They definitely weren't skydivers with lights. There were points of light that were just so anomalous and strange. They had no explanation for it, and we kept in contact. I continued. Don't ask, Betsey, I don't know if it was the scientist in me or whatever, but I felt compelled to document these lights on film. And I continued up into and including March 13th, when, unbeknownst to me, thousands of people, for anybody that doesn't know what happened on March 13th, were outside looking up purposely at the sky for a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet that was very clear in the northwest sky.
I remember that.
Yeah, when they also caught a glimpse of 1 mile to 2 mile wide, in some very credible reports, either these lights, these orbs, or some of them were right underneath these things and called them canisters or wells of gaseous swimming light, or craft. And let me just interject here. There were multiple craft. I mean, there was so much misinformation and disinformation out there with the media and skeptics, and I'm a skeptic, so I'm talking hard-nosed skeptics, the bunkers that don't want people to actually look at the data, or they don't look at the data, because after a 12-year compilation of hundreds of reports, and we're talking very low altitude, some people said it was rooftop altitude, totally silent, didn't even display air, whatever these were. There was many things going on for many, many hours, starting at 3 in the afternoon till 5:30 the next morning, when a Boeing crew saw one of the objects hovering over their tarmac. I mean, there's so much to this story. But at any rate, a 12-year compilation of hundreds of reports to the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, Village Labs, which was a computer house here, who was the clearinghouse for all the information and witnesses. Councilwoman Vice Mayor Frances Barwood, who was the only elected official who innocently, she didn't see it, but she was doing her job, because so many of her constituents had called asking why there wasn't an investigation in May, months later, innocently asked in a council meeting if they could look into it, and she was plastered. I was so happy I had stayed anonymous, because anybody that came forward really was I mean, it wasn't pretty. And Arizona, well, we can get to that. But Arizona MUFON, hundreds of reports were compiled by a couple of the investigators, Michael Tanner and Bill Hamilton, William Hamilton, and illustrated on our website. If you can go to the GAP page, GAP, Geometric Geospatial Animation Project, GAP, Geospatial Animation Project, you can see that there were 8 or 9 different crafts that people described, and very different. I mean, it's, whether there was one craft that could morph into looking differently with different sets of lights, and one of the crafts split in two, another one actually, which now graces the cover of the most recent edition of our documentary, internationally award-winning documentary, actually has, each light is 3 lights, and what blew me away is that 1 month before our mass sighting, there was another mass sighting in St. Petersburg, Russia. And
wow.
one of the civilians captured video of one of the craft, and it's identical to this craft. I mean, it can blow your mind when
Let me ask you this.
When I saw it. Sure.
But was it ever picked up on radar at all?
No.
No.
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. But
might have been holographic?
No.
Some kind of technology?
No.
It was real.
No.
It was a solid object.
That's what I was going to say. Some people saw not only gunmetal on the bottom, but, and as I said, the investigators believe that there was a parade throughout the state because there were many things happening at the same time. As I mentioned earlier, some people saw these orbs detach from the object, go out into the environment, and redock with it. Holograms don't do that, okay?
No.
Not only that, but some people were standing right underneath it. I mean, like I said, whether it was one craft that could morph, multiple crafts, which the investigators believe, or the perspective from where someone was standing, we may never know. But there were many things happening, and there were 2 people in our documentary. One's an artist who was near the airport at the time, and one was a pilot. He's a pilot. I mean, he's a commercial Vietnamese pilot, military pilot as well, and nobody's talking about. And they looked into the well, what they call a well or a canister of these huge light beams. It's hard for people to describe, but like gaseous or type of substance. I mean, just very different than anything we would ever. And look, I can't rule out anything. I'm open to anything if somebody shows me. But what's very interesting is that there was no investigation. There was no explanation. For months, there was nothing.
Huge cover-up, wasn't it?
Well, there was just nothing. It was just bizarre that here's something so low gliding. And by the way, some people also, when you get back to this hologram thing, some people also saw these crafts take off at a tremendous speed. In fact, there was a call into the National UFO Reporting Center at 3 a.m. the next morning by an alleged crewman from Luke Air Force Base, and very detailed recorded. And we have some of it, we share some of the recording in the documentary, and I also texted in the book, that there was a craft, a mile-wide craft, hovering right in the middle of Phoenix at 7th Avenue and Indian School at about 8:30 that night, okay?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, military jets sent out after it. See, people don't know this unless they...
Oh, my goodness. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, military jets were sent out after it to intercept it or get gun camera from whatever. As they got close, not only did their instrumentation go haywire, according to this crewman, but as they got closer, the lights dimmed and the whole thing disappeared. Freaking out one of the pilots, who he said he helped out of his aircraft because he was so shaken up by it. So, there was something real happening here, okay?
Sure.
And we're talking not only many hours, but distance. I mean, there were reports at 5:30 in New Mexico by Native Americans that contacted me, 7:15 by people that contacted me in California, 11:30 there was a commercial airline crew, very interesting, that was en route from Phoenix to California. And this is 140 passengers and a whole crew saw the same phenomena hovering over Las Vegas, like covering Las Vegas, and they called the radar tower and asked what was going on. And at the same time, another airline called in and was all frantic because it was right near them. What the heck is this right in front of me? And suddenly a different voice comes on and says, I want you to tell me exactly what you're seeing right now, and, goes into military terms. And reached out to the crew, and they said, we don't think we see it anymore. We must have been mistaken. I mean, they were really freaked that somebody different came on. It sounded very authoritative. And about a half hour later, and this is in my book, about a half an hour later, as they're approaching California, and they're at 30,000 feet, suddenly they see a big burst of light next to their plane, like less than a mile away, and realize that it's a flare. Now, what's that doing there? And moments later, on the other side of the aircraft, come whizzing by even closer, is a military jet with afterburners on it. And
oh my gosh!
One of the pilots actually jumped out of their seat because it frightened them. I mean, it was that close, and they thought, geez, somebody's trying to send them a message to keep a lid on it. But at any rate, and they've shared that anonymously with me. But many things were going on for many, many hours. So, when people hear that it's only one or two events and that there's an earlier event and a later event, I mean, it's just something that the media and certainly the debunkers who have tried to debunk the only hard evidence from that night, because and many people ask me, why weren't there more pictures taken?
Sure.
Well, first of all, do you remember those giant cell phones that those really clunky cell phones that people had?
Yes.
Well,
1997,
not too many
sure.
people had them, but some people had them in 97.
Sure.
That was all we had, and it didn't have a camera in it, okay? They were just those big clunky cell phones. Number one. Number two, when you're out and about, and there were many people, it was a beautiful March evening, many people were outside going to their sports event or the mall or taking a walk or playing golf or whatever, and you don't carry a camera with you.
No, you don't.
So that's number two. Number three, those people that did have a camera that might have been out there trying to capture Hale-Bopp or whatever, tried to take pictures of it, but it was so gigantic and massive that it didn't turn out. The pictures didn't turn out. But around 10 o'clock, now right before 10 o'clock, there were two of us, okay, that got video. Myself, mine is 3 points of light, like the end points of a giant V. And, if you look on the photo page, on the Gap page, you'll see that, there were descriptions of that by many people. The other is an arrowhead of 5 lights, which also is very poignant because if you go back to my pictures 2 months before the mass sighting, what you'll see in the second picture is just what people would describe as 5 lights in a V with 2 trailing. But this is 2 months before the mass sighting, so this was around. Anyway, as the story unfolds, it gets more and more interesting because there was no explanation, there was no investigation as far as anybody knew. I mean, people tried to contact the Air Force Base, and then when the media asked, they said they didn't get any calls. They only got a few calls. And meanwhile, people got the National UFO Reporting Center number from Luke Air Force Base. Also, there's a 911 police operator who recently came up to me after a presentation and said, I heard that the police said that they only got a few calls that night. I said, that's what they say. And she said, well, I just retired, and I was on that night, and I'm here to tell you it's a totally different story. You want to hear it? I said, are you kidding me? And she's in our document. She's wonderful. And they got hundreds and hundreds of reports that were very consistent. She even shares that the police helicopters were sent out to investigate. So there was a lot going on. I mean, there definitely was something very bizarre, very foreign, very
unearthly,
mind-boggling to people. And the other thing, too, that's really important is that in 15 years, we just celebrated the 15th anniversary, there has not been not one report of harm, threat, or abduction associated with the Phoenix flights. Now, I can't speak for other things, but when you see that, it speaks for itself. It's very telling, and even in real time, it's really amazing. And I do a study of the psychological component. We're actually doing a scientific study right now at university level. In real time, people were changed.
People I was going to say there were some people that had some transformations from the event.
Yeah.
And you too, I think.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess but interestingly, going back to the threat, and harm that we're so inundated with, Dr. Gary Schwartz, who's the head of the Consciousness Study Department at the University of Arizona, makes a very poignant statement in the documentary. He says, if you're afraid of something and you see something you're afraid of, how do you think you're going to react? Okay. Well, 6 months before the mass sighting, the movie Independence Day was very popular.
Oh, right.
And children, who usually were the first to see the phenomena coming toward them, the mile-wide formation of lights or whatever, were scared, and rightly so, and they were jumping up and down, Independence Day, Independence Day. But as it got closer, very interesting, not only with adults, but children as well, a calmness took over everyone, a connectedness to the phenomena, an awe, a wonder, a feeling of joy. I mean, people describe to me now that they felt blessed that they were seeing this as it was happening. And when it passed by, the kids wanted to run after it or have their parents get in the car and follow it. I mean, just in that split second, the transformation is just astounding. And certainly in long term, it has so profoundly changed and touched people that, you know, I still hear every year we have a 15th anniversary celebration showing the documentary at the Scottsdale Harkin Shea Theater, and not only is it packed, but there's many people that come out not only for curiosity, but that saw it, and over and over again, I hear every year, and I've gotten thousands of emails, how it really touched people still today. I mean, it really wakes people up that we're not alone. I mean, that's what's happening with these phenomena, and they're happening worldwide, and they have for many, many centuries. Anyway, I'll get back to the story. So after the mass sighting, and there were other serendipitous things, I'll let people enjoy it in the book, but I find out a week after the mass sighting that this is happening worldwide. Now, I knew nothing, and here I'm finding out these things are happening worldwide. I mean, I knew nothing. It was so... I mean, you know, for someone who thinks they're educated, I mean, here I'm learning of a whole new world opened up to me that I started to keep a very intricate diary, a daily journal that I wrote everything. I mean, I pushed my entire medical career aside to try to find a logical source in meeting, went to extreme lengths to have my photographs analyzed and explained to me, which to date have never been explained and cannot be denied. And I was starting to talk about the video around 10 o'clock. Let's see, this was months later, June 18th. And again, there was no explanation, no investigation as far as we knew. And suddenly there's a front page USA Today article that opened up the sighting to international scrutiny. Overnight, it went viral. It was unbelievable. I mean, we were, not only was it on every news station, every morning show, it just went wild. And media, as soon as they talked to the witnesses, their descriptions were so heartfelt and so detailed that they too were saying, there's no investigation, there's no explanation, what's going on here? Well, about a month later, and I also called every military base, by the way, because I wanted to find a logical explanation, and they were more interested in seeing my data. They had no clue. I have some of the conversations in my book. It's comical. I mean, they were just as curious as everybody else. And I get a call from one of the heads in PR at the Air National Guard a month after the USA Today article. It was July 24th. And she says to me, "Hi, Dr. Lynne, I think we know what those lights were back in March." I said, "You do?" She says, "Yeah, do you believe in all this time and all these months nobody ever looked at the log for visiting Air National Guard? And the Maryland Air National Guard was in town sending off military illumination flares in Operation Snowbird, which I came to learn later means diversionary tactical maneuvers in military terms, so I don't doubt that they might have sent off flares, but I have to tell you there was not one person, not one, that came forward with a description of flares in the entire state. But be that as it may, she says that must be what some people saw. Now, first of all, you have to remember that this was over people's heads, so that it couldn't have possibly been flares. They don't do that, okay?
No,
but besides that, I said to her, now, wait a minute, when was the Maryland Air National Guard in town? She said March 5th to the 15th. I said, were they in town in January? She says, oh, no. I said, are you sure? She said, absolutely. I said, wait a minute. I said, because I have 35 millimeter. I never told them what I had, by the way. I have 35 millimeter photographs of the same exact phenomena in the same exact location as my video, confirmed the next morning by air traffic controllers in both instances, 2 months before and the morning after the mass sighting, as hovering in Class B restricted airspace 1,000 feet altitude. And she says, "You never told me that." And then I said, at the side, and I had educated myself to what flares do. I said, "You're trying to tell me that flares that cannot keep a formation, that drift and drop haphazardly with the wind within minutes, have huge smoke trails that are illuminated by the flare itself." And again, no one described this statewide. Traverse the entire state of Arizona for many hours in a rock-solid, mile-wide, equidistant V formation.
How can flares
do
this?
I have a call coming in. I'll get back to you. Well, it's 15 years later. I'm still waiting. But anyway, what's interesting, Betsy, is, and people do not, very few people know this, unless you were really into this at the time or read my book. People don't know this, and this is really important data, because even after that, hey, I was open. If it's military, do it again. And not only that, but I had substantiation in 35 millimeter photographs that whoever did this did it 2 months before in the same location and 2 years before. Okay, well, do it again.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, it wasn't. Well, it wasn't until right before the 3rd anniversary of the mass sighting, we get an announcement big time in the news and on radio and so forth that 3 Air National Guards were coming into town. I believe it was New York, Michigan, and California, to send off flares, a deployment of flares to show everybody the Phoenix lights. And we were ready, okay? The media as well as witnesses. And I have to tell you, if you get onto the news page on the phoenixlights.net website and go down to the second level, the second one down, block, it says AZ Family 3. It's a CNN affiliate. There's a report that I did last year where they showed the footage that was taken that night during this flare drop, this supposed reenactment. And I have to tell you, Betsy, it was not only such a failure for them, but it confirmed for the witnesses that what we saw was definitely not flares. And again, unless you know that this happened, you have no clue that it has been, they did try to reenact it. It has never been reenacted or explained. So that's really an important piece of the puzzle that, to this day, and it's 15 years later. Plus, people ask me all the time, well, it could have been military, a black project, whatever. Well, again, I'm open to anything. Show me. It's never been shown to me yet, okay? And I just see these things up close and personal in a very private, gated community nestled in the mountains where the military would not be for a second, okay? But besides that, shame on them if it was something experimental that they were doing right over people's heads, okay, statewide. So it just doesn't make sense. Plus, we've never seen any of this technology worldwide. Where is it? Except we have seen these phenomena show up. I'm sorry.
Let me run something past you. Phoenix, the city of Phoenix, was named after the mythical bird, the phoenix bird, which is, consumes itself in fire, and it's about death and rebirth. So do you think that they were sending a message because Phoenix represents, I know a lot of alien abductees have talked about seeing a huge phoenix bird whenever they've been abducted, and it seems like there's no coincidence. There's some kind of link between the phoenix and them. What do you think?
Well, all I can say is that I'm open to that. Personally, I don't get into the abduction phenomena. It's not my expertise, and I really don't know what's going on there. But as far as these anomalous phenomena, and certainly what happens when someone sees these phenomena and has the experience, it's you can equate it with the phoenix. I think that it's very possible, and certainly there are many people that think that's the case. I don't know, but it's kind of cool. I mean, it's just the the thought of having a rebirth, and it is a rebirth. I mean, when people, have these experiences, it really touches you to the core. I mean, you realize, in fact, it was very interesting. When I was interviewing other witnesses, a number of them said to me and shared that they had near-death experiences as children. That was reawakened.
You had one, right?
Yes, exactly. Well, that's what really hit me, because other people did too, and it was reawakened right before the lights came back, and that's a story in itself that I tell in the book. But I thought, geez, if this is something that's not a coincidence, maybe there's something to this. Maybe there is a connection between all unexplained phenomena. Unexplained aerial phenomena, near-death experience, out-of-body experience that have a mystical light associated with the experience. And I started looking again. I mean, I had already been looking and finding incredible data that these phenomena have been with us since human documentation began, and there's similar sightings for decades, Lubbock Lights and Hudson Valley and UK and Belgium and all over the world, and certainly just 1 month before ours in St. Petersburg, Russia. But then I was also finding out that there were studies being done at university level that confirmed that there was a connection between all unexplained phenomena. And the Omega Project at the University of Connecticut, Dr. Kenneth Ring, I mean, it's like a 3-4 inch book that's really hard to get through. But when I started, finding other studies as well, it was really mind-blowing to me, because here I was finding that not only is the experience very similar, whatever the unexplained phenomenon, I lay that out very simply in the book, but the after effect, that to me really hit home, because it's so profound, it's so life-altering, a connectedness that one realizes to the universe and to the earth and to each other, that
we're not alone.
Never be taken away. Yes, that we're not alone. And so, that I get into. I started actually calling all unexplained phenomena UP and up, because they are ups. I mean, there is such a positive transformation that happens to one that truly experiences an unexplained phenomena experience. Or you don't have to experience it. If you open your heart and your mind and learn about it, you can also have this positive transformation. It's just up to you whether you want to go there or not. But at any rate, I found that very, very intriguing as well.
So do you think that we'll ever have disclosure from our government, from the military, from anybody that aliens exist or these other beings out there exist? Or are we still going to get told that we're seeing things, we're seeing swamp gas, we're seeing Venus or stars?
That's a really good question, Betsey. In fact, yesterday was very poignant to that effect, because I don't even go there anymore, to tell you the truth. I mean, what I'm doing is at a true grassroots level. This has all been from my own heart and pocket. In fact, I'm working I left a wonderful job. I did go back to work, by the way, to help put our younger son through medical school. He's a neurologist now, and he's in the documentary. He's had a couple sightings.
Oh, wonderful.
As a chief clinical consultant at the Wellness and Imaging Center at the Arizona Heart Institute, where I pared down, after 4 years, I had a 750-page journal that I pared down to the best of what I found. I didn't know whether to come forward or not. I mean, it was very precarious for someone, particularly in the medical field, professional, to come forward with this topic. But the data was so compelling, and I continued taking photographs. And they're on my collection. Unique collection is on the phoenixlights.net photo page on the website. I mean, what do you do with that? I mean, as an educator for over 35 years, how could I not share this important, data, especially if it's important? And that's why I'm sharing the missing time data now, because I did not share it until last year. I kept it private for over a dozen years. I never told anyone, and nobody knew that what Dr. Bruce Maccabee had presented was my material until last year, because when I did the latest edition, the third edition of the book, of what has happened since I came forward in 2004 after 7 years of anonymity, I thought, geez, how can I, since there are no coincidences, I really don't believe in coincidence anymore. I have this data. Maybe it's integral data that can help open the door to the fact that our linear time, what we call time, past, present, and future, may be primitive, maybe not what time is at all. And also
Right.
quantum physics and quantum mechanics is starting to catch up and talking about string theory and bubble theory. There could be 10 or 11 different dimensions. Well, if there are other times and spaces, as they're postulating, along with ours, why is it such a leap to think that there might be other intelligences in those other times and spaces that we get glimpses of if we're open to them or invited? So I thought, you know what, it's time I get this information out there. Hopefully science will take a look at it. And that's what I've said right along. I don't know what these things are. People ask me all the time, what are they? I don't know. I don't know what we can speculate. We can postulate that, well,
right.
maybe, interdimensional. I do think they're interdimensional, whatever they are. Interstellar, from other planets, dual world, time travelers. I don't know. All I know is that they are. And that it's time we get this topic out in the open, address it, accept it, and study it so we can move forward and not only find out who's driving these things, but also move forward in our own evolution. Because, there were flat earthers around till 500 years ago. And also, like I said, with the microscope, I mean, it opened up a whole new world to us 17 centuries later. So, just because we can't definitively define what these things are, it doesn't mean they're not real. And yesterday was a poignant example of, unfortunately, what's still happening in the mass media. Now, here locally, I have to tell you, I praise the people locally here. They have been so amazing in opening up to these phenomena. They take it seriously, and there are some things that can be explained. I mean, we've had sightings that end up to be blimps. We've had sightings that end up to be balloons. We've had sightings that do end up to be flares, and I've even taken that opportunity to help the community learn the difference between flares and the true unknowns. But it's really disheartening that yesterday in the Anderson Cooper show, which I had conferred with the people, and we couldn't get it together for me to make it to this program. And I have to tell you that I am so happy that that I didn't, because they had a skeptic / debunker on, and what's really getting ridiculous, and the viewers, I mean, they look like idiots. I mean, I'm sorry, but they look totally uninformed. I mean, they even started talking about the Phoenix Lights, and he knew nothing of what he was saying. I mean, it just was comical. And so, where people, witnesses, would be the ones who were laughed at in the past, I think pretty soon these debunkers, so-called debunkers or hard-nosed skeptics that don't look at the data but just spew out what they feel that they have to, they're the ones that are going to be laughed at. I mean, they are right now. Hopefully people will just start looking at the data, and that's all I ask. I mean, not only with the book, The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone, and the documentary, which I left the Arizona Heart Institute to complete and haven't looked back, and we keep revamping it and updating it. Astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell is wonderful. He is in it. And we have so many wonderful witnesses and experts as well. Even a French Foo fighter who was in World War II. I found out that the orbs that each side was seeing during World War II, very similar to what my husband and I saw, was thought to be advanced spy technology until after the war. Everybody realized that nobody had this technology, and these orbs have been seen hovering over nuclear bases. I mean, there was so much more to this story, and yet they've never damaged or hurt anything. What's going on there? So, plus the fact, I mean, there's stories in the Bible about these things, Sumerian writings, etched out carvings in primitive caves, prehistoric caves. So these things have been around since human documentation began, and certainly the Native Americans, getting back to them, certainly have a better idea about the realities of the universe, that we are not alone, that there are other intelligences out there.
Right. We just have less than a minute to go here, but would you give out all your information? The time just flew by. So.
Well, thank you for letting me share, and I hope that the audience
thank
learn
you.
some new things, and we'll pick up the book, The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone. It's available through our website. Amazon.com usually has the the best discount, and of course it's on Kindle and Barnes & Noble and so forth. The Phoenix Lights documentaries, won over a dozen international film festival awards, unheard of for a documentary, and certainly one of this genre, and kind of an adjunct to the book. Many of the people we talk about in the book are in the documentary, and it's kind of an overview, a gentle overview, just as these phenomena are touching one person at a time in a non-threatening way. I hope that both the book and the documentary will help do that, to just raise awareness. And I'm also working now on getting back to my passion, now that they've kind of gotten a life of their own, working on a curriculum for 5th to 12th grade called Out of the Box, which will focus on many of the aspects of unexplained phenomena, including crop circles, the geometry and math, and the history timeline, as well as, what if we're not alone? Just get the kids thinking. They thirst for this knowledge. And
right.
There is nothing in the classroom about it, and much more. So we'll keep you updated with that. And
okay, great.
Please get on the website, thephoenixlight.net.
Well, we're out of time, but thank you so much for being my guest. It's just been wonderful, and I'd love to get you back on again. We've got so much more to talk about. We could talk about it for hours, I'm sure, but I have a feeling there's going to be more sightings coming up here, so keep us informed.
I certainly will, and and I tell people all the time, keep looking up, because if you keep looking up, you're going to see something.
That's right.
It can be explained, but your reality may be opened up a little bit more, and certainly with looking at the data, and that's why I came forward to let people know that it's okay to talk about it. If you want to email me and just share with me, I have thousands and thousands, over 20,000 emails from people from all over the world, which I really welcome. It's very cathartic to share, and just look at the data. It speaks for itself, and decide for yourself. And thank you so much for letting me share today.
Well, thank you so much, and I hope to meet you one of these days out there somewhere in one of the conferences.
Absolutely. I'm going to be in Texas for anybody in the Texas area, Glen Rose, Texas. I'm going to be speaking May 19th, the first 2012 Women's UFO Symposium. There's wonderful women on the lecture table, and we also have men as well, and it's going to be kind of focusing on the Stephenville sighting, which was another similar sighting to the Phoenix Lights in 2008, and it's going to be a really fun time. So if anybody's in that area, to check out starworksusa.com. I hope you can join us there, and on my webpage on Facebook as well, Phoenix Lights Network. Please join us there. I have updates there all the time. So
great.
I really would love to see your audience join us there too.
That would be great. Well, thank you, everyone. This concludes our show, and until next time, keep those rainbow visions in your heart. Bye, everyone. Thanks so much again, Dr. Lynne.
Thank you, Betsey. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.